My name's Logan, but most people know me as Wolverine. I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice. Hello, bub, and welcome to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. My name is Dominic, and today I have a real treat for you all. This week, I'll be reviewing Wolverine Epic Collection Madripoor Nights by Chris Claremont and Peter David, with John Buscemi and Gene Colan. But before we dive into our review, we're going to do a couple quick facts. Wolverine Madripoor Nights is part of Marvel's Epic Collection, collecting Wolverine issues 1 through 16, as well as Marvel Comics Presents issues 1 through 10, and Marvel Age Annual number 4, plus a few odds and ends like essays, promotional images, and covers. The issues in this collection were first published between 1988 and 1989, and this edition comes in at about 504 pages. Before we continue, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. While these issues are over 30 years old, I know some of you might be wanting to read for the first time. I'd like to let you know I will be going over some plot details as well as flipping through the collection. Okay, and here's the collection itself. It's the standard Marvel Epic Collection format, so standard size here. I will say the paper stock is very good. It's not one of the cheaper printings in my opinion. And generally, I love the artwork on the front and back covers, taken from some of the issues in this very collection. As we work our way down here, you can see the description on the bottom. This is considered Wolverine Epic Collection number 1. But that being said, I'm really bummed we missed out on the 4-issue miniseries event Wolverine from Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. I love that little run and do not currently have it in my collection. I was hoping it would be included in this, but I understand. But what we do get is pretty great in its own right. As I mentioned earlier, this collection contains Wolverine issues 1 through 16, Marvel Comics Presents issues 1 through 10, and Marvel Age Annual number 4. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, as I certainly was before I picked up this collection, Marvel Comics Presents is a pretty interesting concept. Basically, it's a book that was divided into, 4 parts, where each comic itself contained a couple different stories that were shrunken down, 10 to 12 pages each, give or take. So the Wolverine collections you get in those 10 issues themselves are a bit shorter because you only get the Wolverine portion. This is very similar to what you see in those early Captain America and Iron Man epic collections, where you only get the respective heroes portion of the shared book. This wasn't really a problem for me. I honestly felt like the adventures were full enough that I didn't always notice the page count of those issues from the Marvel Comics Presents. Now let's talk about the stories themselves. This collection picks up somewhere after the Fall of the Mutants event, wherein all the X-Men are presumed dead to theoretically allow them to fight their enemies without fear of retribution. The stories pick up for Wolverine in the small island city, Madripoor, which is somewhere south of Singapore. It's basically portrayed as a horrible ghetto, or to quote another beloved franchise, a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Here, Wolverine finds himself adopting the persona of Patch, which, you guessed it, is just Wolverine with an eye patch. I suppose if Clark Kent can get away with a set of glasses, Logan can get away with an eye patch. As Patch, Wolverine definitely does try to be more discreet, not unsheathing his claws unless in times of dire need, or when there's not going to be any witnesses around, or when he could eliminate any witnesses. Because of this too, it's rare to see Wolverine in his costumes, which is a bit of a shame, but honestly it lends itself to some creative storytelling, feeling like we get this drifter version of Wolverine who's not famous, doesn't have any of his iconic clothing, and just tries to help people out. Many of the early stories in this collection revolve around rival gang lords who are vying for the soul of Madripoor itself. Of course, Wolverine is caught right in the middle of a lot of these struggles, and I've got to say, it's a pretty fun ride. However, the stories really pick up for me once we get to Wolverine's solo series. Wolverine issue 1 in this collection picks up a story about a possessed sword that has some fun magical powers. This story arc also brings in the Silver Samurai and characters like Jessica Drew, who will be a recurring character throughout the rest of this collection. I don't want to spoil too much of that story arc. Suffice it to say, it might have been the highlight of this collection for me. Somewhere in these early stories as well, we're introduced to the character of O'Donnell, which feels like Humphrey Bogart stepping right in off of his role in Casablanca. This character becomes one of Wolverine's allies while he's in Madripoor. He's also the co-owner of the Princess Bar when Wolverine decides to buy in. The bar itself becomes almost a character, and a kind of de facto home base for Wolverine and team throughout these Madripoor stories. The next big story arc in the collection revolves around Roughhouse and Bloodsport, and the continued war for gang supremacy within Madripoor. These characters are kind of interesting. One of them is just this big brute, the other one is a creepy vampire. Which, side note right now, I was very surprised by the sheer amount of vampires that show up throughout this epic collection. Very fun. We are treated to this stuff both with Bloodsport now and a couple other occasions throughout the epic collection. There's more vampires. This collection also has a few issues that feature the Hulk, who himself is in his own disguise as Mr. Fix-It, this being when Hulk is the Grey Hulk at night and who reverts to Bruce Banner during the day. Those issues are very fun and a little tongue-in-cheek as Patch and Mr. Fix-It share adventures, all the while keeping you guessing whether they really know it's Wolverine and the Hulk who are teaming up. Very fun issues. Honestly, folks, there's a lot of fun stories in this collection, and some that are a little less memorable. The last story arc that rounds out this whole collection is called The Gehenna Stone Affair. This is a 6-issue story that follows Wolverine and team as they try to stop a monstrous villain from assembling an ancient gem that would allow him the power to be indwelt by an ancient demon. The storyline sounds crazy because it is, but it was a fun way to wrap up the collection itself. And that'll bring us right up to the special features at the back. We got a couple essays, some cover art, and that's it for Wolverine Madripoor Nights, the Epic Collection. Let's give this guy a grade. For Wolverine Madripoor Nights, the Epic Collection, well, there's frankly a lot to say. If you can get a copy of this while it's in print, I have to say it's a great amount of content for the price point, and such a fun showcase for the character of Wolverine, or in this case, Patch. I really enjoyed the pencilers throughout this collection, as well as some great writing from Chris Claremont and Peter David. But overall, I did miss seeing Wolverine in costume. And as much as some of these stories really hold up and were fun to read for the first time, some in this collection were just better than others. There were a few times reading this epic collection I felt like it dragged a little bit. But for all that, I think this is still a worthwhile collection. With all of this in mind, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Wolverine Madripoor Nights, the Epic Collection, a B. For all you Wolverine fans out there, I would consider this a must-have. And if you've always wanted to see what his early solo adventures look like, look no further than Patch. As for me, I found this to be a fine place to start with the character as a good entry point. If you enjoyed my coverage today, please consider subscribing to my channel, or take a look at some of my other popular videos. Until next time, have a great week.